Chapter 2.2 V2K- Voice-to-Skull, Intracranial Voice or Microwave Hearing Effect. In the previous chapter, we've seen how to extract an individual's thought straight from the mind as the thought is processed by the responsible cortical areas. So now we're going to look at how to insert sounds and voices directly into the brain. This is the second sub-technology used in the mind control technology system. Although this technology is being discovered by the general public just now and in the form of psychotronic weapons, V2K is an old technology. It comes from the mid-60s and 70s, but it started in the creation of the radar. The first radar was built in 1904 by Christian Hülsmeyer in Germany. At that time there was no practical use for the device of low accuracy and inefficient echo detection system that was difficult to build. In the early stages of radar development, there were no devices capable of producing radio waves at the desired frequencies with reasonable powers. The common vacuum tubes weren't yet sufficiently developed. Even if they were, they still faced serious difficulties in producing waves at very high frequencies. The first practical device capable of producing high-frequency signals for radar application was the cavity magnetron, created in 1921. In 1934, French engineer Émile Girardot registered a patent for his work on a multi-frequency radar system. As Pierre David reviewed electromagnetic theory, he encountered the study carried out by the German and then began experiments for the development of high-frequency wave detection systems, efficient for the location of airplanes. Simultaneously, Henry Gutton and Maurice Pont managed to create a detection device that worked with great precision. Still in 1934, in the Soviet Union, engineer Pavel Kondratayevich Oshchepkov, who received the Order of Lenin, Order of October Revolution, invented RAPID, a radar system that could detect the presence of an airplane 1,865 miles away. In 1935, the United States attained its first single-frequency radar through the work of Dr. Robert Page. At the beginning of World War II, Watson Watt improved and developed new technologies by using the fixed and rotating telemetry system. There was a more rapid evolution in radar technology during the Second World War. Both the British and the Germans were involved in a race to produce larger and more sophisticated radars. The race was largely won by the British, who knew how to use more effectively the radar system they had. But what is radar? Radar means radio detection and ranging. It's an electromagnetic sensor that detects and locates targets by means of reflection, composed of a transmitting-receiving antenna of super-high-frequency signals. The transmission is an electromagnetic pulse of high power, short period and very narrow beam. During propagation through space, the beam expands in a cone shape until it reaches the target being monitored. The beam is then reflected and returned to the antenna as it creates the image, the echo. There must be no obstacle between it and the target for the radar to work. The wavelength must be as short as possible, within certain limits, which implies very high frequencies so that we can detect small objects. Thus, the greater the power, the more echo we have and the easier it will be to detect an object, however far and smaller it is. It's known that the distance from the object can be easily calculated by the constant speed of pulse propagation, and by the time of arrival of the echo. It's also possible to know if the target is moving away or approaching the station, due to the Doppler effect. That is, due to the frequency gap between the emitted signal and the received one. 2.2.1 The history of the intracranial voice. The microwave hearing effect, or intracranial voice, is a well-established phenomenon that began in the 1960s through research by Dr. Alan H. Frey, an American neuroscientist who studied the phenomenon and was the first to publish an article on the topic, involving radar hearing. It was found that roughly 0.3 of a watt per square centimeter of skull surface is required to generate the clicks from which the voice is synthesized. This is considered a primitive form of digital audio. Other notable contributions to the early development of the microwave hearing effect include Dr. Joseph Sharp, Ph. Ph.D. in Psychology and Neuroanatomy from the University of Utah. The voice-to-skull transmission was successfully demonstrated by Joseph Sharp for the first time in 1974. It was performed with Dr. James Seeling's pulsed microwave transmitter at the University of Utah at a seminar presented to the engineering and psychology faculties. The transmitter was then described in the American Psychologist Journal in 1975. The experiment is based on the fact that a medium to high frequency microwave radar pulse can produce an audible click in the auditory cortex of a person who is resonating with the pulse signal. The effect has been called radar hearing since World War I when it was first detected. In 1976, the Los Angeles Herald-Examiner reported that the Soviets were also conducting extensive research on the microwave auditory effect. This issue was brought to the attention of the U.S. Defense and Intelligence Agency, and it was described as words that appeared to be originated from inside a person's skull. Dr. Joseph Sharp used a computer to produce a microwave radar pulse every time the speaker's voice waveform oscillated, every time the sine wave crossed the zero reference in the negative direction. The voice was modulated into a new signal, into a microwave pulse capable of being demodulated by the brain. This experiment is neither secret nor classified. It's available to the general public. On the other hand, the continuity of the experiment by the military, as an electromagnetic or psychotronic weapon, is in fact classified as top secret and is unavailable for public consultation these days. The result was that when Dr. Joseph Sharp sat near the device in front of the microwave transmitter emitting pulses, as shown above, he was able to hear a robotic voice counting the numerals from 0 to 9. Afterwards, the experiment was discontinued by Dr. Sharp and became a state project. It started to be developed by military and intelligence departments such as the CIA and KGB. The race for silent, invisible weapons that affect all living organisms on the planet with a focus on the bioelectricity of the most developed brains had begun. Most researchers from the mid-1602 to the early 1990s have concluded that bone conduction is the physical mechanism that allows for microwave hearing. Bone conduction is just a secondary pathway for sound transmission in humans and most other mammals. The microwave auditory effect is a scientific fact. Existing radar units can be modified to transmit a beam of pulsed microwave energy into anyone's skull at ages ranging from 0.8 to 100 years, and across the planet, which causes sounds of any nature to be interpreted by the auditory cortex. The sounds, which appeared to originate from inside, from above, or from behind the head, are transmitted to the inner ear through bone conduction. There is no external noise. Other people around the person who is configured to receive the pulse cannot hear the microwave content, the sound itself, and the pulse can be applied thousands of miles away from the target.